It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
This is Carlos Brown, letting you know that we're on the move. You can now catch the Carlos Brown Show beginning this July on the Black College Sports Network each and every Saturday from 11 to 1 Eastern Time. That's 10 to 12 Central Time. Same time, new place. On Facebook at the Carlos Brown Show and Black College Sports Network. Online at www.mybcsn.net and on the BCSN app available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. This is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together we can be the change.
Sugar Chateau Desserts is a specialty bakery located in the Charlotte, North Carolina metro area. We will create delicious and one-of-a-kind treats for any occasion. Sugar Chateau is currently shipping cakes in a jar, offering a variety of different flavors in a single-serve container that can help you celebrate in accordance with social distancing. Place your orders today by calling 803-526-7895 or visiting sugarchateaudesserts.com.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food?
Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp,
tofu, and rasta pasta?
Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock
in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m.
Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock
in downtown Atlanta.
For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992
or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com.
For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant.
Authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell them mama hungry.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
Yeah. I love my HBCU, and boy, I love it, I love it, I love my HBCU, and man, I hope my team they won, I hope my team they won, yeah, man, I hope my team they won, I hope my team they won, yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse, but if they won, Team Tab, I'ma do the dab, yeah. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. They are back in the building, making runs on Sundays. We didn't get to hear. We didn't make sure Charles got to put up his cigar, but we put it up there for him, but it looks like he's timely. He found it himself. Charles, what is the occasion?
Dr. Cavil, the streak is finally over. It is finally over. I'll take it. But I have to say, it was a fight, and that's a worthy team. That Southern football team was tremendous in terms of what they were able to present to Jackson State. Tremendous challenge, but at the end of the day, Jackson State was able to get it done. I think that's what Jackson State fans. It was a long time coming.
Yeah, congratulations to you and all the Jackson State fans out there. Well done, well played. It was a thrilling game in many different ways. I was totally excited about watching it. But in terms of Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Doc. Had a chance to play little golf tournament today on behalf of the Prairie View Foundation. So had a chance to hit the sticks today. Unfortunately, I don't have a cigar. PV fell short on its road tour to Alcorn State. Hard-fought game. Too many mistakes, bad calls or bad officiating calls, toward the end of the game. You can call it, what you want. Prairie View gave, the officials a chance to, to botch or make calls. So unfortunately, Prairie View lost. They still controlled their destiny if they went out. So unfortunately, I don't have my cigar just yet, but I know I will have it soon. And it looks like, it's headed toward that little city in Mississippi called Jackson. So my cigar is right behind me, if you will, and it's getting ready. It will make the trip to Jackson. It is a Cuban. So we in the Texas Alpha Nation hold that for a special occasion. So when we face Jackson, when we beat Jackson State, cigars will come out to play. That's just a little band. Me and my good friend CB there.
Yeah, Mike. Hey, you can put that cigar in a glass case. I love it. Keep it in the glass case. That's where it will stay.
Oh man, hey, y'all got 2 weeks for all this. Slow down. This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and they are having too much fun. But welcome to the lab listeners out there. Welcome to episode 207 Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast and show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and the HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. Have you heard from Professor Bishop and Professor Washington? The HBCU sports culture was in full effect this weekend. The athletic aesthetics HBCU framework was just that. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KSUH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. On Facebook, you have that little thing that comes up at the top of your page that sends you memories. I have a picture where we shot a show up there from the top of H&P Arena, looking onto the court with all the championship banners. I look like, man, that's a nice little picture there. I'm gonna have to send that to y'all. With that being said, let's get into it. I'll start it off. Big news of the day, Monday afternoon, that evening around 4, almost 5 o'clock, Grambling State parts ways with head coach Broderick Fobbs. This is according to GSU Tigers. Grambling State's Vice President of Intercollegiate Athletics announced today that head football coach Broderick Fobbs has relieved of his duties effective immediately. You're talking about being at the height, Celebration Bowl, winning the Celebration Bowl, national champions, back-to-back, having a tough loss the second year, but how things change and fall off to where you're actually losing to programs that are getting their first and second win against you. It's been a tough year, including what happened in the spring. I do want to get your insights before we go to other news. Just what are your thoughts on this? I'm going to start with you, Mike Wash. What are your thoughts in terms of Grambling State parting ways, if you would, with Broderick Fobbs?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and you tip your hat despite the consequences to Coach Fobbs. He's done a tremendous job. The last few seasons, they've seen kind of a downplay or a regression, but we can't overlook and overstate the impact that he had to this program. They, a 2017 championship, so unfortunately they've had a downslide, and, unfortunately decisions have to be made. So he was hired in 2014. He completes his term, at 54 and 32 overall, which included, SWAC championships, 2 Celebration Bowl appearances, and the Black College Football National Championship. So despite the fact that, Grambling has decided to part ways, you got to tip your hat to the job that he came in and has done. 3-time SWAC Coach of the Year. That, they don't give those out. So you got to tip your hat. And unfortunately, it just, it's where the rubber meets the road. And unfortunately, Grambling had to make a decision based on recent data points, recent performance, but you can't overstate the job that Coach Fobbs has done. Typically, we always look at what have you done lately, but you got to look at the totality of his whole tenure and look at what he's done for Grambling. So I'm sure he'll rest on solid feet, but hats off to Coach Fobbs. Unfortunately, they had to separate, and that's the business that we're in.
Charles, in lieu of that, what are your thoughts in terms of this being this new Coach Prime, Deion Sanders factor, Jackson State, the influx and expansion of the SWAC, new SWAC, as some people I like to call it in terms of Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, the success that is going on with East. How much of that plays into this decision now that we've talked about this a little bit? There's this race to be at the top, particularly in the sport of football. But now with the heightened sensitive and all the additional eyes that are on the SWAC, how do you believe that played out in this decision?
Oh, I definitely believe it played out in regards to this decision because you can't fall too far back in the pack. And I think that went into making this decision now. Like Mike said, sort of a disappointing turn of events for the Grambling football. But I echo his sentiments wholeheartedly. When you take a look at what Broderick Fobbs did for this Grambling football program, he resurrected it. I remember when he came in, this was a program that did not make the trip to Jackson for a football game. It was a complete disarray. And what he came in and did was absolutely, completely, and totally resurrected the Grambling football name. And they slowly made that ascension back to where we were used to seeing Grambling. So I always take my hats off to him in that regard. So I think, with regards to kind of the recent downturn in Grambling football, the Florida A&M, Bethune-Cookman, the Coach Prime effect, all of it plays into I think where Grambling wants to be or trying to get back to, and they want to make sure they don't fall too far back in the pack. So, like Mike said, this is the business. This is the nature of the business. So it is what it is in that regards. But Coach Broderick Fobbs was tremendous during his time frame at Grambling.
Yes, great point made by both of you all. Ricky Burton, Franklin Nelson, Ninzo Phillips chiming in and giving you a hard time, Mike. Thomas Einstein Maddox, Chad Cooper. New AD made a move quick, fast, in a hurry. Yes. Varick Williams in the house. Chuck Hunt, always in here. Michael Road Dog Reed giving us some love today, checking it out. LaShawn Harris, Troy Franklin, Jason Thornton, Tremaine Scott, Ron Alvarez, Anthony Johnson, Jason Thornton, Lonnie Shaw. Hey, y'all, word on the street is Grambling is following JSU and TSU and looking at Hall of Famer Jerry Rice and Barry Sanders. Interesting. I don't know where that's coming from. Chad Cooper, GSU new AD is under pressure to make a good hire. Fired a man with a winning conference record and a championship. Yeah, I certainly believe he's on the thing, but don't get it fooled, people out there. ADs in this business in this time do not make the unilateral decision to dismiss a football coach. And in schools that are basketball programs, they don't do that. They have checked out the landscape. They have the support of the president. They have support of the board. And you better believe they have support of key alumni stakeholders. So never go in these things thinking that the athletic director all alone has made that move. Now, does he have a huge played a part in it? And will he ultimately be one of the key stakeholders? Yes. And certainly for somebody that has just come in the program, whether they're at Alabama State or at Grambling State, they did not make that decision alone. Going into a different direction, I had a lab homework assignment for Brian and AD of the Sports Wrap, and they brought this up yesterday. We started talking about, and I've been playing with these numbers, and we talked about this very early. Charles, you said something about the East Division. Mike, you talked about the West Division. Well, they did a homework assignment and did the records of the East versus the West. Check this out. All the lab listeners, this is the homework assignment. They got it done. I think I graded them as an A+ with this. The Eastern Division of SWAC has 2 top teams in the most Black college football polls, and both are ranked nationally in the FCS, as well as defending conference champion with the returning conference player of the year. Has the East really been the beast that many prognosticators thought they might be? Well, let's analyze the head-to-head against their opponents from the West Division. That is a quote coming straight from Brian as he did and compiled his data. The week 11 of the season, the SWAC East has won 9 of 14 cross-divisional games. Over the last 3 weeks, they really started to dominate. East is 8-1 over 9 games. That includes this past week, week 10, they were 4-0. Week 9, they were 3-1. Week 8, they were 1-0. During the first 4 weeks, cross-divisional games, the West Division had won 4 of the 5 contests, and I kind of put that out there. I got radio silence after that. Overall, road teams have won 8 of 14 cross-divisional games. This was key to me. Last week, all 4 games won by the East were as the road opponent. That was key. Jackson State, Bethune-Cookman, Alabama A&M, and Florida A&M go on the road late in the season to get key wins. Wow. What's left? There are 4 cross-divisional games remaining, so the East will have the better record regardless, but we'll just see how dominating that is. 3 this weekend and 1 the last weekend. Those games are Alcorn State at Jackson State, Texas Southern at Alabama State, UAPB at Alabama A&M, Mississippi Valley State at Prairie View, week 13. So I'm interested in your thoughts. I'll start with you, Charles. As you said in a lot of ways, yeah, it may start early in the West, but you said by the end of the year, you thought it would be the East. Well, crown you with another masterpiece as we're going to have to start making sure that we bring you when we go to the casinos and the betting man, because you got it going on right now. What are your thoughts for this?
When you take a look at the top 3 teams in the SWAC East, you just feel number 1 and 2, Jackson State and Florida A&M defense, I think, are 2 of the best defenses in the nation. And then you take a look at Alabama A&M, one of the top offenses in the nation. It's a lot to deal with. And then I've been so impressed with Mississippi Valley during the course of the year. And I know Mike's Valley, but Valley plays a solid brand of football. Sometimes it gets snake bit, but they've been impressive this past season. So I just kind of looked at those top 3 teams, much as we used to look at those top 3 teams in the West, and kind of decipher that those teams can kind of hold water, if you will, in the SWAC East. Whereas when you take a look at in previous years in SWAC West, you always had Grambling, Southern, and maybe a surprise sitting out there in the SWAC West. But SWAC West took advantage of some down years for Jackson State especially. So I think, that plays into it a little bit there too.
Great points made. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, as one who had picked, the top three to come out of the West, you can't deny the fact that the top two teams, as Charles alluded to, you look at defense. You look at Jackson State and Florida A&M, top two defenses. You look at Alabama A&M, who's really come on strong here lately, with their offense, which is, still, revitalized. We thought we were going to have to tap to get a pulse. But, when we look at the West, the teams that we thought would be in there, Southern, what happened to Southern? Alcorn State started out slow, but they're peaking up. And then, you look at, what Grambling, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. So, and then, the big surprise is after a huge performance in the spring, UAPB has just fallen off the radar. I sit on several chat lines, and you get questions like, has UAPB just mailed it in? Because they, with Skylar Perry and that offensive crew, even though it's new from the spring, you expected them to compete this fall, and that just didn't happen. So it's a bit of a surprise to me, because I actually picked the West to have the three strongest teams, and actually it is proving to be the East based on statistics, based on data. I mean, not just based on head-to-head wins, but if you look at data, analytical, statistics in all categories, unquestionably, with a few exceptions, it is the East that is really dominating the stats, as well as the head-to-head victories, as what was revealed in your homework assignment.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop, Professor Washington. We're going to take this first quarter break. We'll be right back on the other side, give you the poll rankings. Won't take us long there, but we'll get into some other discussions and maybe give you some more news. But let's get into this first break. We'll be right back after this.
Shop Melvin Online Women's Boutique to spice up your closet with trendy, unique looks. We have fashionable and chic looks at very affordable prices. Melvin Boutique offers free shipping all year long on all orders. Shop online at www.melvetboutique.com. That's www.melvetboutique.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Shop Melvin Online Women's Boutique.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil, Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. I see y'all chopping it up out there in the lab, lecture halls, man. That homework assignment got y'all going up into it, talking about the Grambling dismissal. Y'all got a lot going on. I like it. Matchups coming up. Y'all still fine and heavy. But let's get into the poll rankings. We're going to start with the mid-major division. Not a lot of changes here, but it sure could make things interesting in the playoffs if we find some of these teams facing off each other. Let's get into it. At number 10, you have Lane Dragons, 6-4 and 3-3. Their season is complete. We have number 9, Shaw Bears, I should say. They're 6-4, 5-2. They dropped 3 spots in the poll along with Lane, as you saw. And then at number 8, you have Kentucky State Thoroughbreds. They're at 7-4, 4-2 on the season, 22 points. They got a victory last week when most people were not playing because the season was complete. As you got into the CIAA SIAC championships, they scheduled a game, they won it, so they were able to jump up 3 spots. At number 7, Virginia Union Panthers are 6-4, 5-2, 31 points. Previous ranked 8, so they slide up a spot. At number 6, you have Miles Golden Bears. Although they lost there, they still move up in terms of 3 spots, the previous being 9. They stay in the mix there in a lot of ways in terms of what's going on in that mix. Let's get into top 5 where it gets interesting. Actually, at number 5 is Virginia Union Panthers, 6-4, 5-2. They move up a spot, 2 spots. At number 4, you have Fayetteville State Broncos, 8-2, 7-0, as they fall a spot after losing the CIAA championship game. At number 3, you have Savannah State Tigers, 8-2, 5-1. Did not play, but they move up a spot based on the strength of the Western Division of the SIAC. At number 2, Albany State Golden Rams, 10-1, 6-0. For first place votes, 82 points, as they will play in the Division II tournament. We'll talk about that a little more in the second half of the show. At number 1, Bowie State Bulldogs, 10-1, 7-0, 6 first place votes, 93 points. Stay at number 1. It will be interesting to see what takes place in the playoffs. As you see, the first place votes is relatively close there. Both teams are playing at a high level. Both teams have 10-1. Both teams are undefeated in conference play. Both teams won their conference championship game. It'll be fascinating. One team is ranked a little higher in terms of their ranking in the playoffs. But, Mike, what are your thoughts on the poll rankings this week in week number 11? As Bowie State is 3rd straight week, they're number 1.
Yeah, no real surprise with Bowie State. I think they turned out to be who we thought they were. So no real surprise. Their offensive output. I guess you look at that same matchup again against Fayetteville. What happened? Same story. Again and again and again.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. So no real surprise there. Hats off to Bowie State for being able to reload with their talent. So I think your poll on Dr. Cavil is spot on with this one.
Charles, what are your thoughts on the poll ranking in the mid-major division?
Albany State had 6 shutouts, correct?
Yes.
Ooh, I'm tipping in their favor on number 1.
I think they actually say in some way in terms of defense they have 7, because one of the games the score came off the offense on a pick 6 fumble recovery for a touchdown. It wasn't against literally the defense. So they've been dominated on the defensive side. Yeah. I would point out that Bowie State did lose 1 first place vote, so it's gotten a little closer in terms of that. I think in a lot of ways it's just going to go who goes the furthest in the tournament. It would be a beautiful thing if they actually played in the regional round to go to essentially the Final Four. But it'll be fascinating to see in terms of what that looks like in terms of the semifinals. Tough road to go in terms of getting past Valdosta State if they're able to get out of these first rounds. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Let's get into the major division poll so we have a chance to get into it. 2 teams drop out this week, major division. Tennessee State Tigers, 5-5, 3-3. They will not likely have a winning season. They play Mississippi State to end the season. Norfolk State Spartans, 6-4, 2-2. They fall out the poll. 2 tough losses, back-to-back losses after having 20-plus point leads. Both of them they let get away, which means they let their opportunity to win the conference championship and go to the Celebration Bowl. And they had like 2 of the tiebreakers, had the game at home against South Carolina State, which we will talk about a little bit because that game will determine whether South Carolina State will go in the Celebration Bowl with the winning record or not. So that's fascinating. But let's get into poll rankings. Number 10, Delaware State Hornets, as we talk about, 5-5, 2-2. They're the team that gave it to Norfolk State and ended everything they wanted to do in their season. They're not ranked. They jump in the poll. This is a team, if you think about it, 5-5, that beat Bowie State, a top team in the mid-major division, but it was a close one. Fascinating to see how that works out. At number 9, North Carolina Central Eagles, 5-5, 3-1. They remain at number 9. At number 8, South Carolina State Bulldogs, 5-5, 4-0, 31. A tough loss to North Carolina A&T that jumps back in the poll at number 7. North Carolina A&T State are now at 500, 5-5, 3-3, 42 points. Be interesting what they're able to do their last game to see if they can at least resurrect and come out of the season with a winning record. And how they took that precipitous slide, that would be a statement in a lot of ways. At number 6, Hampton Pirates, 5-5, 3-3, 46 points. Jump all the way up for number 10. Teams out of the Big South, right in the middle of this poll, Hampton Pirates. They do have the win over North Carolina A&T, and they've kind of rebounded on a season that went south, so they're doing pretty well there. Top 5 programs, Alcorn State Braves, they jump back in the top 5 after a couple of weeks being out of it, or in terms of that. Big win over Prairie View. They're at 6-4, 5-2, 72 points. Major game this weekend. We'll talk about that as well. At number 4, Alabama A&M Bulldogs, 6-3, 4-3, 75 points. 4th place, big road victory for them. Went down to the wire. 3 wins, 3 losses, 3 wins. How did they finish the season? They're going in trending in the right direction when many people left them to dead with joke of the world for a while there. But at number 3, Prairie View and the Panthers, they followed at 2 spot, but stayed in number 3 at 7-2, 6-1, 76 points. At number 2, you have Florida A&M Rattlers, 8-2, 6-1. Move up a spot, 102 points. Started pretty high in the poll, and at the end of the season, they're finding themselves right back there. Only loss in terms of HBCU conference players to the number 1 team, Jackson State Tigers, first of the year. Who would have thunk it? A lot of people thought maybe that meant a lot, but we're starting to really see. 9-1, 7-0, Jackson State with a big victory this past weekend. They now have all 13 first-place votes, 130 points. Getting it done. Starting with you, Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of the major division poll rankings?
Well, first and foremost, let me congratulate South Carolina State Bulldogs for getting to the Celebration Bowl. Whatever happens in the SWAC, we know who the opponent will be. And I think a couple of years ago when we were looking at South Carolina State's program with Buddy Pugh, we were questioning whether Coach Pugh was even going to still be around, and they have resurrected things, turned everything around, and they are the MEAC representative in the Celebration Bowl. There is nothing more I can say about this Jackson State game, the number 1 team. You talk about a rivalry game. It was intense. It was fierce. It came down to a last possession, and Jackson State truly showed some championship mettle in terms of scoring 14 points down the stretch and getting a key defensive stop. So this game is going into this Alcorn game this weekend is going to be huge. It's just one of those deals, and I think Coach Prime talked about it in the Monday presser. There will be no, taking players off this weekend or anything like that. Anytime the scoreboard is on, everybody's on. So you got to keep your foot down on the gas.
Yeah, I appreciate that about and anybody knew him, I don't know why y'all would even put that out there that he's going to sit some people. The only way they're going to sit some people, unfortunately, if the SWAC office mandates it. Other than that, they playing. And to your point that you said, Buddy Pugh, South Carolina State, what was interesting as I was on the call to MEAC football, through that game with North Carolina A&T into the second quarter, the starting quarterback got hurt. Obviously, that hindered them in that game, but it's fascinating in terms of what that means against Norfolk State. They only go on with the backup that was on the practice squad. Wow. I asked them the question in terms of, does the fact that they finished early now give them a chance to get the backup ready in terms of the Celebration Bowl? He said yes, but there's a chance that you can actually get the starter back. So you might see 2 quarterbacks being played in that game, which is going to be an interesting dynamic. Obviously, you get all those players healed, which is something that may work in South Carolina State favor that a lot of people probably didn't think about that. But getting back to the poll rankings, Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of the major division?
So yeah, congratulations to South Carolina State. We went into the season thinking, could this be the same South Carolina State? Could they run the ball like they've done, historically? Could they play defense like they have historically? They've peaked and hit valleys, and give it hats off to South Carolina State and the Bulldogs. They've done it, so they're in the Celebration Bowl. And hats off to Jackson State on a hard-fought game. I can't reiterate the fact that Alcorn State, when we started the season, with their loss, everybody had put them out, down and out for the count. What's wrong with Alcorn State? Why were there, players, pulling up with hamstrings and pulls in game one of the season? And they've slowly climbed their way up. They played Prairie View very hard and held a very tough Prairie View to a certain amount of yards, points, but now they come against Goliath in the East. So we'll see how it goes. Can that defense of Alcorn State quail the offense of Jackson State? That'll be the question. We know, Alcorn State has somewhat of a defense, but what can they do against that Jackson State offense? That'll be the question for me. It'll be a hard-fought game. I expect, we won't get into it. I'm sorry, Dr. Bill. I don't want you to shut my mic off. So I don't have predictions. So, but that'll be the question for me. That'll be the game of the week is, what will this Alcorn State defense do against Jackson State? It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I see you trying to give out a little early hint. No, man, keep them wanting more. That's the name of
I know. I'm sorry. My bad. I'm sorry.
So you played it well. You caught yourself. Great job. Let's go to this first half break. We'll be back, and we're going to get into some of the Division II playoffs. We got two HBCUs. Maybe talk about, did Savannah State get left out? We can talk a little bit about that more on the second half of the show. Stick with us as we get back into it, as the lab lecturer and fanatics are getting into it. Great comments. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. We'll be right back after this break.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High-quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop, Professor Washington, digging in here and getting it to you. We're going to get into the Division II playoffs. We have two teams in. Question I have for you before we get into the breakdown of that: should there have been three? Should Savannah State out of SIC, should they have been in? When you talk about they were at 8, one of the teams leapfrogged them to get into the poll ranking into the tournament. When you talk about Lenore Ryan and New, what were your thoughts in terms of what took place there? Quickly go to you, Charles. Should Savannah State have gotten in?
I thought Savannah State should have gotten in. I think they had a lot of intangibles going in, potentially going into the playoffs. The biggest thing is I saw they were like the number 8 defense in the nation. And I really wanted to see how they would match up against a team. And for them to get leapfrog, I believe Savannah State's 8-2 on the season.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't understand it, but this is, it's unfortunate. I really wanted to see how they would match up, and I thought they did have a worthy season where they would be right in the mix for a playoff spot.
No doubt. And we know all the rules and the governing parts of that, but even with that aligned, there still was a chance they got in there. So that's why I question. So to you, Mike, what are your thoughts on that? Should Savannah State have gotten in?
Yeah, I think unquestionably they should have gotten in. Not only on the defensive side, they put up quite an offensive display as well. So I don't know where they ranked accordingly in FCS football, but I just
they were eighth in that division, and the 6 teams get in automatically. 7 really get in terms of that. They were right out of that, but the team above them lost. But the team behind them, 9, jumped over them with the win.
Over them.
So that was a surprise as you get into it. To your point.
Yeah, I knew the team behind them jumped over, but I guess I didn't understand all of the criteria for allowing that team to jump over them.
Well, that was just how people on the selection committee. That's how they didn't necessarily have to jump over. That's what they selected to do. There is some formulas where if a team, in terms of the 4 conferences, if they're in a certain spot, they automatically go in. But in this case, it was because they jumped them. So you have 2 teams from the SAC, 3 teams from the Gulf South Conference, a team from the CIAA and SIC. So that's the thing that's weird about that. I wanted to ask you that before you get in there as you're talking about that, because I think you jumped on the fact, yes, they should have got in. The other question I have for you before we break down these matchups, as I got you, Mike, on the tip of your tongue there, is the number 1 seed, Valdosta State, lost to West Florida. So a lot of people were talking about Saturday before that, would Bowie State and, to your point, Charles, Albany State move up? Would Bowie State get the number 1 seed, undefeated at the Division II level, play some teams outside of the conference that were traditionally strong, and so they did everything they could in terms of that, dominated the conference. Should they have gone the number 1 seed and had that bye, and Albany State move up to 2? Because those teams going in, they were at 2 and 3. They won. But you had Valdosta State lose, but they stayed at 1. But then you had some teams that jumped over them because Bowie State kept the number 2, but you actually had Albany fall to 4, which is Charles talking about. Since Savannah State, Albany State fell to 4 with West Florida that did beat Valdosta State. They jumped all the way up to 3. So sticking with you, Mike, what are your thoughts on that? And then I'll get your thoughts as well, Charles.
That looks like fuzzy math to me. So first of all, you take a team like Bowie State, and you look at their record, and then you look at the team that lost, and then you don't move Bowie State up based on their record in conference, I guess. The question I ask is, what weighs more, in conference, out conference win, outside external conference wins? What weighs more with the committee? What are the decision factors?
But I think that's the thing, Mike. All of this is subjective. So you're absolutely right. We can bubble it back and forth and all these things. And you're absolutely right that they take all this criteria. But that's the thing. It's never level set. One group of folks will say strength of schedule, as AD points out that Valdosta had the second strength of schedule. But those things change. If that was the criteria for all the time, you could schedule yourself at least non-conference to play the toughest teams. But those variables change from year to year in terms of who's ever on the selection committee. So for me, it's like I'm always going to argue for whatever rationale I use to make the decision I make. So I'm not saying that we're not crazy. We read, we understand that part of it. We understand what they said. We understand who had the strength of schedule. We're asking the question, what is the problem with the consistency when you talk about committee folks? And it's always a group of schools that no matter what the variables are at a given time, the consistency changes such that those programs that are seen as outliers never get the opportunity to create the resume that allows them to be in a position to take advantage of what they do in the season. So if the variables are always changing, it doesn't matter. And so I know that's kind of unfair to you, Mike, as you in there, but I wanted to get that off. And before we get too far, I wanted to go to Charles and give you at least a decent comment on that, and then we'll kind of move around and get some things thought process.
Well, real quickly, the question for me is, if Albany State was able to ascend, would they have allowed Savannah State to get in?
That's my question.
I would think so, that they probably would have got in there. And maybe that was the ultimate decision, is we're not going to send them because we don't believe Savannah State should be in there. And if we do that, we have to put Savannah State in there. And then I have a whole different formula that also says too, and this is just the business and marketing side, which is funny to me because these folks always talk about how they market their program. It's almost like the CFP that comes out, they talk about, if you put the same teams in there, at some point, you're going to get to the point where your fan base is going to be diluted because folks are not going to think they have a participation part in it. One of the reasons that the NCAA tournament itself is so big is that you have so many teams in there, and it gives you the opportunity, even though it doesn't happen very often, is that you have those opportunity upsets. If you have the same programs in there churning out, it becomes boring after a while, and people tune it out because you only have a certain segment of the country, in this case, or only certain programs that are always in a position. So the criteria that's set up is a major concern to me. Well, let's get into
the one other point, if you'd allow me, is the NCAA looks at sometimes style points, point differential.
Well, let's be careful with that because it's not the NCAA. It is
I know it's not.
It's folks that represent the NCAA. We talk about this NCAA as if they're this ultimate thing. It is membership folks that are ADs that are from these same conferences that sit on the committee and they get together and they create this criteria. So it's not just a NCAA panel that is not folks. It's folks embedded. So all these folks are biased too. They're human.
But let me finish my point. The NCAA does look at that. Now
it's not the NCAA.
If you
say the committee. The committee looks at that. It's not the NCAA.
Yes.
That is incorrect.
The committee looks at that. The committee that represents. All right. When you look at style points for you talk about that. When you look at style points for Bowie State versus Albany State, I would argue that Bowie State, if that was one criteria, would have more advantage over Valdosta State. If you look at style point, I wonder if that committee looks at that. That's my point.
That's the problem. We don't know. They in this little quarantine camp and they come out and they ask 4 or 5 questions. And you try to ask them and they just walk you around. Well, we looked at that. No, we didn't look at that. Maybe sometimes we look at that. So your question is valid, which is the whole thing that I'm bringing up. It's just like in this secret dungeon where folks come up and they do the smoke. Do you see the smoke coming out the chimney? Do we got a new pope today? I don't know. Whatever. But it's ridiculous in a lot of ways. And yes, on purpose making fun out of it. We'll get into the tournament. Teams get an opportunity, which is good. But don't try to sell me on the greatness of this stuff when we all know it's vagary and a lot of things going on. Obviously, we understand the competition is fun and we're going to cheer for our schools, but don't sell me on more than that when that's not what it's about. So Absolutely. Getting into the matchup, number 2 seed NCAA, you got Lenore Ryan Bears, historically white college, obviously, as you know, 8-2, 6-2 on the season. They're at number 1 Bowie State Bulldogs, 10-1, 7-0. They did get a home game, credit to those involved about that. They are, again, our number 1 ranking. So that's going to be interesting. Then you have Albany State, who also got a home game. They will play Gulf South Conference, West Georgia Wolves, historic white college, 8-2, 5-2 at number 2 in our poll ranking, Albany State. That is the 4th seed for Albany State in terms of the NCAA tournament in that region, 10-1, 6-0. So it's going to be fascinating. We'll get a chance to chop that up a little more on Thursday, but I wanted to at least put it out there in terms of what that looks like in terms of these matchups. So it's fascinating. But I wanted to get in some discussion in terms of the guidelines and the rules and just gives people a different perspective as we do it and jump into it. We'll be right back after this break. We'll get into the major division, talk about some of these key matchups this weekend. It's going to be fascinating. It's not over yet. It's really, really intriguing in terms of what that looks like and that. And so appreciate you, Mike, for allowing me to use you as we talk about going through that. I know you're very aware that it's a committee, the NCAA. You set it up well for everybody out there to listen. So you give me a chance to kind of stick out my chest and do what I do. Appreciate you. Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watch and Charles Bishop. We'll be right back after this break. The fourth quarter, we do that. It's Paul Television.
This is Carlos Brown, letting you know that we're on the move. You can now catch the Carlos Brown Show beginning this July on the Black College Sports Network each and every Saturday from 11 to 1 Eastern Time. That's 10 to 12 Central Time. Same time, new place. On Facebook at the Carlos Brown Show and Black College Sports Network. Online at www.mybcsn.net and on the BCSN app available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. This is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together we can be the change.
Sugar Chateau Desserts is a specialty bakery located in the Charlotte, North Carolina metro area. We will create delicious and one-of-a-kind treats for any occasion. Sugar Chateau is currently shipping cakes in a jar, offering a variety of different flavors in a single-serve container that can help you celebrate in accordance with social distancing. Place your orders today by calling 803-526-7895 or visiting sugarchateaudesserts.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach us.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. In the break, you see Charles Bishop. He's already talking about the band Polo Thursday. And we're gonna see the fallout. They get interesting. See what goes on there. As you know now, Norfolk State Spartans at number 8, South Carolina State Bulldogs. The Spartans are 6-4-2-2. South Carolina Bulldogs are 5-5-4-0, locked in up a Celebration Bowl. We talked about that. But you get into the end of the season. Any thoughts on this matchup? Obviously, Norfolk State wants to make a statement, want to go in the offseason the right way. Certainly don't want to lose the end of the season with 3 straight. We saw that with Langston at the mid-major level. A couple of other programs on the verge of having 3 straight losses. That's a tough way. South Carolina State obviously wants to go on and win. But as I said, they're playing the backup quarterback. I'm intrigued about this game in its own way based on what it means in terms of Celebration Bowl. Obviously, not so much what we thought going into of what it could be in terms of de facto MEAC championship game. Sticking with you, Mike, I'm going to start with you to make sure you get your time in there as I kind of pulled the mic from you earlier. What are your thoughts in terms of Norfolk State at South Carolina? It should be South Carolina State at Norfolk State.
Yeah, so I think Norfolk State will want to make a difference, but I think I see South Carolina State kind of pulling this one out, even though Norfolk State's leading the league in total offense, scoring offense, whatever. South Carolina State just seems to have that formula. And, oh, by the way, Norfolk State is on the road. So I see South Carolina State kind of pulling this out. I don't know. You want to say that they're going to play to win, but they're looking to try some different formulas out in preparation for the Celebration Bowl, from my perspective. So you may see some different looks for them. So I expect the unexpected with South Carolina State. I expect them to win, but I expect to see a lot of different looks from South Carolina State as well. Norfolk State, I look for them to at least make a good impression for recruiting purposes, but we'll see. But I look for a lot of different looks from South Carolina State as they prepare for the Celebration Bowl.
Interesting. Trying to get more on film for whoever they played to have to dissect. Charles, what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I think when you take a look at Norfolk State, these deflating losses, I think, could have a detrimental effect in terms of playing the South Carolina State team. And does it change the calculus of having a backup quarterback in there? Definitely. But when you have a running back like Kendrell Flowers for South Carolina State, you just lean on him and lean on that offensive line. So I look to see a lot of Kendrell Flowers in this game and trying to wear down this Norfolk State defense, because we've seen them in the second half just kind of, I don't know, go off into the Netherlands. So I don't know what to say about it. It is befuddling to me that Norfolk State would sort of flip the switch in the complete negative over the past couple of weeks. Very surprising. So for that reason, I'm going to go with South Carolina State in this.
Hey, check it out. Let's go off the script in the SWAC for the major division game. This was the championship game in the spring. It is Arkansas Pine Bluff, 2-8, 1-6. They're at number 4 Alabama A&M Bulldogs, 6-3, 4-3. A lot of things about this matchup are interesting to me. Let me stick with you, Charles. I know to some people this is off the script, but we'll get into our big matchups on Thursday. They're key. We'll tease out a little bit to talk about not the matchups, but what they mean going forward after we break down Arkansas Pine Bluff, Alabama A&M. What are your thoughts there in that game, Charles?
I still got to go with Alabama A&M. They're still one of the most potent offenses in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. I do not
did we see that with 52 points against Texas Southern.
52 points against Texas Southern. I mean, that was tremendous. When you take a look at what Quill Glass has the ability to do when he has time to, maneuver and find his receivers. I mean, he can really eat up defenses. So I have to go with the Bulldogs in this, Alabama A&M.
Mike, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have to go with the Bulldogs for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's going to be in Huntsville. Number two, we don't know.
Mike, you know that means that you're West versus East. That's just hurting that even more, man.
I know. But I gotta be honest. Alabama A&M put 52 up on the board against TSU, which TSU scored 49. And oh, by the way, Texas Southern did beat UAPB, if memory serves me correctly. They beat them convincingly earlier this year. So the stage is set. It's in Huntsville. Alabama A&M is playing on the upside. They kind of have rediscovered football. Unfortunately, the playoff picture whatsoever, or the bowl or the championship, they're still fighting hard. I don't see that fight in UAPB. Any football prognosticators or experts will say they don't see that fight just yet. Something has happened in this UAPB machine. So for that reason, you got to expect that Alabama A&M is going to come out with a win.
Grambling begs is different, though. Grambling felt that fight this past weekend.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. With that being said, I want to go into the Florida Classic this week. And then also in terms of the Soul Bowl, as some people call it, the SWAC Classic now, if you would, is what they're calling it in terms of that. But I don't want us to go and break down the matchup. I want us to look at first FAMU as we go back and talk a little bit more about the playoffs. This one is for the FCS playoffs. FAMU wins. They are currently in the top 25. They were in the top 25 in terms of CBS poll last week when all three teams were in: Prairie View, FAMU, and Jackson State being the top-ranked team, obviously. Prairie View has fallen out of both that one and the FCS, but FAMU has jumped in the FCS poll. These polls are not part of the committee that we previously talked about. It is a committee of peers, so it's a different committee, but same type of style. What are your thoughts about if FAMU is able to get it done against Bethune-Cookman? In terms of important to the fans, they stopped that losing streak. But Mike, in terms of your thoughts, are they able to get into the FCS playoffs now that Jackson State has clinched that? Now we can really get in that conversation. If they're able to get this win, do they get in the bid to the playoffs? Mike.
Absolutely. Without question. And I think this is the year to me that the streak ends. I think FAMU has it. Their defense is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. Bethune has played strong at times. They have a strong set of running backs, but I think this is the year that you see FAMU actually eclipse, not only this battle, but make it and get a bid into the playoffs. And I think they'll actually do well in the playoffs, because if you look at their upswing, it is completely increased, like an exponential function, a linear function. They have increased over the season. They started slow with an early loss, and you look at their defensive and offensive output. They started with a very new quarterback, and you look at their performance over the course, and it has steadily increased and improved. So I look for a strong performance from FAM on both sides of the ball, all sides of the ball, knowing Willie Simmons.
So many of the posters out there, and a lot of the FCS folks that do on the FCS board out there, they put out their poll rankings and things of that nature, put up their de facto weekly who's in the playoffs or not. I think they're in the second 4 out or whatever. They may have just moved into that first 4 out. So many people, Jimmy, a lot of folks, Thomas, don't think they're getting in. A lot of that's out there in terms of where they are on the rankings. So it'll be interesting to watch. Great entertainment TV. Lonnie Shaw jumps out there and says, "Fam, you better watch out. BC is peaking. It might be 9 in a row. I think it'd be 10 actually the whole decade. I think it already is 9 in terms of what that looks like if Bethune-Cookman is able to get it. Bethune-Cookman has won 2 in a row. But again, we're not talking about the game. We're talking about playoffs. Do they get in the playoffs, Charles?
Here's what concerns me. Not only does FAMU have to win, but they better win convincingly. This is a 2-8 football team that they're playing. So you can't have a close win and leave it to the committee, so to speak. You better go out there and convincingly get this W. Streaks are made to be broken. I do think FAMU is going to break the streak. But here's something interesting that I've seen with Jackson State in the past couple of weeks. They've won, but they've been closer margins, and they've slid in the polls. So that's why I say FAMU has to win convincingly to really make that emphatic statement.
Second matchup.
Style points. Yep.
Style points makes fights. You're right. Good points there that you're making. And again, this is not a matchup. We'll save the breakdown in the matchup, who we think may win that matchup, as it's a SWAC game. We'll save that for Thursday, so stick with us. And we'll also do that for Jackson and Alcorn. We'll talk about the matchups. But theoretically, if Jackson State, for FAMU to get in, does Jackson State need to win big over Alcorn in terms of that matchup? Obviously, it has its own ramifications of what that means for Prairie View in terms of the matchup. And if Alcorn gets it done, does that hurt FAMU? Sticking with that part of the formula, not really looking at it. To your point, FAMU needs to win big. Does Jackson State need to win big in terms of trying to level set where they are in the poll going back to their first matchup? Sticking with you, Charles, what are your thoughts on that part of the formula?
It bolsters Florida A&M's resume if Jackson State is able to go out and win big over Alcorn. Again, like I said, over the past couple of weeks, we've seen Jackson State win by smaller margins of victory, and they've slid in the poll. So that's why, I still will be kind of scoreboard watching to see if Jackson State can put up a number, which is going to be extremely hard against Alcorn. It's a rivalry game. It's Southern all over again. It's that same intensity, that same heat. So I don't know if we're going to see this big swing in terms of point differential.
I'm gonna ask you that same question, Mike, but think about it like this. Is also intriguing to me. When you talk about strength of schedule and all these factors, each conference is a living and breathing thing in itself. And no matter how talented the team is, a rivalry is just that, a rivalry. So whether the rivalry is in the SWAC or the MEAC, or if it's in the Southland, the Big Sky, all these conferences, when you look at it, CAA, it's a rivalry game. So the intensity of that is what it is. Some folks get the benefit of the fact that it's a rivalry game. Other folks don't. So it's always fascinating to me how you look at that too. But based on what I just asked Charles, Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of that part of it? Would it help FAMU if Jackson wins big? And as Charles said, do you think FAMU has to win big in itself?
Well, number one, let me go to does Jackson State have to win big? I think they have to win convincingly. However, they're playing a team with a better record. They're playing despite the fact that Bethune better than what their record says, they're still 2-8. All right. So I think FAMU has to win convincingly and more impressively. I think it behooves Jackson State to win convincingly. However, if they win by a touchdown or two, they're playing Alcorn, which is 4-2 in the SWAC and has, I forget, an overall record and has more of a history of winning SWAC championships. So you have to look at what the judges, what the committee or whoever the folks that are deciding this looking at, and they're going to look at Alcorn defending SWAC championship. You beat them, even if it's not as convincingly, you beat them. And I think Jackson State, that pressure of style points is not as much on them as it is on FAMU.
All right, great point. Well said. Let's get out of here. Thanks all the lab lecturers getting in here and getting it done. Thank you for listening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6. Come back to us Thursday. We'll jump into those matchups. We'll go inside the matchups, inside the numbers to tell you who we think will win these MEAC SWAC games of the week. Come back Thursday. We'll break that down. We'll get into a little bit of more of the playoff games and we'll give you some inside thoughts about that. Obviously, we have the poll rankings, so we'll have a lot for you on Thursday. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
Mike.
Lecture.
Dismiss.